now we really would like to switch gears and really talk about our region, the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program. By the way, the word of this sub-regional program is a little bit misleading. 20 years ago, when we really started this economic cooperation program with only 5 Central Asian countries, right? Then we expanded to include South Caucasus countries. Then Pakistan and Afghanistan joined as observers, and then a few years after they became full members. And of course, also we have People's Republic of China so really, when we say Central Asia, we really mean Central Asia, South Caucasus, part of East Asia, and also South Asia. So now we are talking about 2 economic corridors, which we already mentioned earlier in this morning, the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor, and the youngest, in a way, in CAREC program, and probably more complex economic corridor, Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujan economic corridor, which involves 3 countries. But I also wanted to say that while listening, the first presentation, the first session moderated by Alfredo, we kind of in the audience felt that we visited, Thailand and Mindanao and all these beautiful locations. So thank you for giving us this flavor, of kind of like a mini travel to this economic corridor. So we do hope we will bring you a little bit of flavor from Central Asia, South Caucasus now. And I do hope this is your job, guys. So please, no speeches, please be engaged and share really your honest views, your insights, all opinions are welcome here. So I would like to really briefly mention all our panelists here. So we will have 2 presentations. First, of course, we have Mr. Dairbek Maksatbekov. He's the head of Donor and Technical Assistance Coordination Division at the Ministry of Economy in the Kyrgyz Republic. Very much you're welcome here, Mr. Dairbek. And then we will listen to Shinlan. And of course, Shinlan has been together with Pradeep, Yubin, and all the team working on the economic corridor analytical work from the very beginning. And Shinlan has, tons of experience and knowledge on this. And she is the key focal point for these trilateral economic corridors. So we will hear first kind of just to set the context for this session from these 2 panelists. And then we have a very distinguished panel, and we really are looking for your insights from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Also online, we have our colleague Teya. She will share her views on another economic corridor in our region, that is between PRC, People's Republic of China, and Mongolia also. So we also have, I'd like to introduce our panelists also here. Mr. Solizada Ashurboy, we already introduced you earlier, First Deputy Minister from the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade of Tajikistan. Of course, we have also Mr. Abdullah Hashimov, advisor to the Minister of Investments, Industry and Trade in Uzbekistan. And many thanks for your very insightful remarks in the morning session. And of course, we also have Ms. Bibigul Masirbaeva, who has been with Regional Cooperation Program from Kazakhstan for a long time already also. And Ms. Bibigul is the Deputy Director at the Department of International Cooperation of the Ministry of National Economy of Kazakhstan. And last but not least, certainly, we would like to introduce also as our panel, Mr. Christian Rosbach. He is my colleague in our division. And I think without Christian, I really have to say that ABEC probably will not be happening and will not be diversifying into really broad range of activities, including air quality, including agriculture and border crossing points and so on. Okay, so With that, so let me invite first Mr. Derbek and then Shinlan. But again, let's try to keep this engaged and just give us very brief concepts or framework for what you wanted to share. And then after that, we invite also participants to share your views and to ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to finish earlier than 10 minutes. Yeah, just to briefly talk about ABEC program. So, okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon again, dear colleagues. My name is Derbek, and as mentioned by Laziza, I work at the Ministry of Economy and Commerce. And as part of my official duties, I supervise the implementation of Almaty-Bishkek Economic Corridor project. And today I would like to share about the information of the progress of the project and the result that we have achieved jointly with the with the Republic of Kazakhstan on this project. So as you can see on the slide, I will briefly mention about the start of ABEC initiative and its areas of implementation, such as connectivity, tourism, agribusiness, trade, logistics, climate ecology, and healthcare. So if we talk briefly in 2013, the governments of Republic Kazakhstan and Kyrgyz Republic launched the implementation of ABEC initiative at the site of Central Asian Regional Cooperation Program with the support of the Asian Development Bank. And the memorandum of understanding was signed between two cities during this CAREC ministerial conference in Bishkek in October 2014. And also we established the ABEC subcommittee. The ABEC subcommittee is responsible for all aspects related to the development and implementation of ABEC projects. So here you can see the institutional framework. And I would like to outline the institutional framework of ABEC corridor. As I said earlier, the Kyrgyz and Kazakh Intergovernmental Council established the ABEC subcommittee. Under the subcommittee, we have the joint working groups have been established also in the areas of agriculture, tourism, connectivity, and health. And as of today, 7 regular subcommittee meetings, which are taking place in turn in both countries, and 4 meetings of joint sector working groups have been held. So now we're moving on the first area is connectivity. Within this sector, the ABEC team of experts prepared recommendation for the modernization of Kyrgyz and Kazakh border crossing points. And with the support of ADB, a project is being prepared for the implementation and financing of the project to modernize border crossing points and the creation of training center for the state border service of the Kyrgyz Republic, as well as equipping all the checkpoints on the Kyrgyz side with the technical border control equipment in the amount of 25 million US dollars. Secondly, ADB under ABEC assisted in studying the potential economic impact of an alternative shorter road between Almaty, the economic center of Kazakhstan, and the coast of Lake Issyk in the Kyrgyz Republic, which is a very popular tourist destination. Considering that the project is a cross-border project, ADB suggested that the bank support should begin with the legal analysis and the recommendation on the legal framework, financial and technical analysis of the project. Today, ADB has completed a preliminary technical and financial assessment of the Almaty-Issyk alternative road project, and further, in accordance with the decision of ABEC subcommittee, it's planned to provide support in development and updating of cost-benefit analysis and cost allocation mechanism of the project. So thirdly, it is we have the direct bus service from Almaty to Bishkek in September 2022. Direct regular bus service was launched by private company between two cities, and joint work is underway on the possible organization of separate procedure and lane for buses and at the checkpoints using mobile passport scanners on buses. And also ADB provides support for the preparation of public-private project to launch electric buses on this road. So now let's talk about the tourism development. ADB helped prepare several investment projects in Kyrgyz Republic to implement the ABEC Tourism Development Master Plan, which was approved in February 2020. And based on public-private partnership, it's proposed to invest in ski sector, build and upgrade summer and beach facilities, as well as facilities for the conference and meetings. Also, on the basis of this master plan for the development of tourism, several projects are being developed. One of them is managing the environment of Istiku for the sustainable development of tourism. This project will primarily rehabilitate the existing wastewater treatment plant and other associated facilities, and will focus on priority investments to be implemented to stimulate the tourism industry in a sustainable way. And in addition, the ABAC is working on two projects jointly with the World Tourism Organization on development and implementation of the Common Accommodation Classification System, SCSR for Kazakhstan and Kyrgyz Republic, and also the development and implementation of common security measures for ABAC. According about the agribusiness, ABAC is also exploring the possibility of creating modern agricultural wholesale markets and trade and logistics centers in Kyrgyz Republic. As an initial stage in the implementation of this idea, it was decided at the initial stage to focus on the development of the value chain in agriculture that is resistant to climate change. The project was approximately for $40 million, will provide the loan for the Kyrgyz Republic that through qualified participating financial institutions will be directed to lending to businesses in the value chains of the horticultural sector. And according to the preliminary, According to the preliminary estimates, the project will solve critical problems in the supply chain and the supply of quality products. We have also the project in air quality control. So as of today, with the additional funding, it has become available to support the cities of Bishkek and Almaty in their efforts to promote healthy and clean urban environment. 50 air quality sensors were installed and launched in the winter of 21 in Bishkek, and the same number in 22 in Almaty. The measurement of PM in the air in the city helps to identify the main sources of pollution, their impact on the population in different areas of the city, and serves as a baseline for development strategies in improved air quality. And it should be noted that the all data is available in real time on the ABAC website. Also, as the logical continuation to as of today, the Bishkek Clean Air Action Plan has been prepared based, among other things, on data from a network or mobile sensors. And the last sector is healthcare. In the healthcare sector, the first meeting of joint working group was held in February 2020 to develop an ABAC action plan for the development of reference laboratories. In September 22, ADB approved the Strengthening Regional Health Security in Kyrgyzstan project, $30 million to improve the infrastructure and capacity of reference laboratories and collaborate on quality assurance and standardization of benchmark studies. And as for now, within ABAC, support is provided to the Scientific and Practical Center for sanitary and epidemiological expertise and monitoring in Almaty. So what we have, sorry, I didn't turn on the last slide. What about the lesson learned? The first, I would like to know the importance of focusing on specific projects. Secondly, it's important to create the institutional framework, and it could be in format of a memorandum. Thirdly, written confirmation of the decisions taken in both countries is required. And fourth, the creation of trusting relationship between countries and participants in the meetings of some subcommittees and joint working groups. And of course, constant support in the form of ABAC Secretariat, preparation of project financing, project launches, and other issues. So these were all the main great achievements of the implementation of Almaty-Bishkek Economic Corridor project as of today. And I want to thank you for, by taking this opportunity, I'd like to thank ADB for the support to ABAC project and highlight great work of ABAC team. and lead by Christian Rosbach, economist and team leader for ABEC project. So I hope that will be helpful for the further discussions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Derbik, for this very good overview of the ABEC, and also thank you for staying on time. So my next one, I'd like to invite Xinlan to give us as interesting and as short overview of the Shymkent Tashkent Pujan.
Thank you very much, Aliaziza. Good afternoon to you all. I'm very glad to provide a quick snapshot of the Trilateral Economic Corridor, the Shymkent Tashkent Pujan Economic Corridor, or in short form, STKEC. I think in the morning, our participants from Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, they have already touched upon the issues of this Trilateral Economic Corridor. So I'll be very brief. So my presentation will focus on 5 key aspects. So the overview, rationale, roadmap of STKEC with an update on the progress of implementation of the roadmap, and finally challenges and opportunities for STKEC development. So the STKEC development started with an ADB technical assistance approved in October 2018, which assessed the potential of ECD among the 3 geographically adjacent countries of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. So ADB conducted a TA inception mission in May 2019, and followed by intensive field research and 2 regional workshops that consulted multi-stakeholders, including private sector of the 3 countries on the ECD. So the proposed geographic focus of STKEC is the Shymkent city and the Turkestan Oblast of Kazakhstan, Tashkent city and Tashkent Oblast of Uzbekistan, and Sukt Oblast, including Kujiang city of Tajikistan. The geographic coverage can be expanded later to include other cities and oblasts of the 3 countries, as well as linking to the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor when conditions mature. So the main reasons for this geographic focus include its favorable location and spatial features, relatively good cross-border transport connectivity and large population size, and robust economic activities among the 3 countries, and close historical, cultural, and ethnic ties, and the plethora of opportunities that exist among them for mutually beneficial cross-border economic cooperation and integration. So the rationale, So the roadmap on the STKEC development was based on broad consensus among multi-stakeholders of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. So that the countries agreed that efforts to create the STKEC should focus on the sectors and the thematic areas which can bring mutually beneficial results relatively quickly. Taking into consideration initial conditions and untapped potentials in the STKEC region. So as a result, 6 intertwined thematic areas are identified as priority in developing the STKEC. So these 3 thematic areas, they are there, so I will just not go in detail. So there are sects and explanatory. So what I would like to highlight is that the list of these areas for the STKEC development, they corresponds to the development priorities of the central governments of the three countries, as well as the local governments of the cities of Shymkent, Tashkent, and Turkestan, and also Surkh region. If necessary, the list can be expanded later, in particular other thematic areas such as like urban development and education. So this slide shows the vision and expected results for STKEC development. I think maybe I just skip it because I think these are all the grand objectives of this economic corridor. So I think I'll just focus maybe more on the challenges and the opportunities. This slide just provide like an update on the progress in implementation of the roadmap for the STKEC development. So with the additional tier resources approved in 2020, so right now we are undertaking pre-feasibility studies of 2 key projects, which is being finalized. So we have also conducted knowledge sharing, capacity building activities, including in May this year, we conducted a knowledge sharing workshop in Batumi, Georgia, which the 3 countries has learned the very good RCI or ECD experience of Georgia in promoting regional cooperation and integration. So we are also support the institutionalization of STKEC. So this slide shows the progress in the implementation of the roadmap from the country's perspective. So this includes like modernization of the BCPs and also launch of passenger railway services between the cities, and then the plan of a series of plan of construction of a logistics center and also other connectivity related projects and services. So the challenges. As I think these issues have been touched upon by all the other participants, I think particularly related to this trilateral economic corridor, I think what is important is ensuring continued support of numerous stakeholders, including government agencies at national, provincial, and the city level, ensuring like active participation of the private sector, lowering barriers to cross-border movement of people, vehicles, and goods, while ensuring public safety and security. I think the border crossing of cargoes, particularly, has been an issue within all the 3 countries. So I think this issue is really key as like improving software side of the economic corridor development. And then and the last but not least, that ensuring the benefits of the economic corridor to be shared by all the 3 countries, including like the central level, the local level, which is very important. So so we saw there are some strong opportunities for developing this economic corridor. So like the region has a strong historical, cultural, ethnic ties. And then there are recent and also increasing improvement in bilateral relations among the 3 countries. And then the high priority attached by the government to deeply regional and global economic integration, and also membership of the 3 countries in a number of regional cooperation organizations and programs. Thank you very much. I think this trilateral economic corridors, as Aziza said, is like maybe the youngest economic corridor in the CAREC region. So I think the SDKEC represents the real S-type economic corridor in our region. So it is still in the initial stage of development. I think the roadmap development have taken into consideration the initial conditions and the potential benefits to all parties involved. So while it is challenging to develop a trilateral economic corridor that involves different interests from central, oblast, and city governments, where the opportunities are huge, I believe that our country participants will have a lot to say. So particularly like Mr. Hashimov from Uzbekistan, who has participated in this economic corridor activities from its start. So let me stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nlan. All right, so after this two presentation overviews of ABEC and STKEC, it's a very long abbreviation for the trilateral corridor, I really would like now to get to the most interesting part of the panel, which is really a discussion. So, you know, given this very distinguished panel, we have here so many years of knowledge and experience and your, really brains and really experience that you had in government policies, in promoting these projects. I really would like to get to your insights and to your opinions. So with the power of moderator, I'd like to change a little bit the format of this session. I know that you all prepared some views and we would like to hear them. But if I can ask maybe to do it in a way that you answer several questions, maybe 3 or 4 that we will now discuss. One question I'd like to get your views on is something that is on the back of my mind for some time, and I was posing this to many people who are dealing with economic corridors framework, and that is dealing with population. So with a lot of countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, of course, we know it's a populous countries, very populous economic functional areas, and so on. In our countries, especially in South Caucasus, I would say the population size of this economic functional areas are not so big, right? They're not so numerous. And yet, as economists, we know that economies of scale is very much important. So what are your views on economic corridors development in the areas which are not so highly densely populated? Do we still promote economic corridors, and how we do that, and so on? Another question I think is very relevant in these days discussion is the link between economic corridors and value chains. And of course, again, for our region, Central and West Asia, South Caucasus, currently the value chains is so important, so relevant. And I'm talking about with sanctions that neighbors have and so on. So what are the opportunities really you see in your areas where you work in that context? Also, I'd like now to ask actually audience, because for many of you, you don't know much about ABEC and trilateral corridor. So I'd like to call upon maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience, what you are interested, what really you want to ask this panel. And I know in the morning we had a lot of questions, so please now take a moment and think about what you want to learn from this panel. I also would like you guys to reflect on what Dairbek and Shinlan already mentioned, the challenges and opportunities, right? So what are the challenges? Rebecca mentioned the trust, of course, between governments and so on. It's a very difficult, very important area. Shinlan mentioned some other opportunities. So to make it really interesting discussion, please also reflect on what are challenges that you see in your work, in your countries. We're talking about Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. We also have Kenya online, PRC, and Mongolia economic corridors. So what are the challenges and what are the best ways, in your views, to tackle them? So coming back to audience, so who wants to ask one or two questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I'm Soumya Chattopadhyay from India Resident Mission of ADB. CAREC has this unique distinction of having this cross-border economic corridors involving 2 or 3 countries. I would like to understand more about the governance mechanism of handling this 3-country corridor, and how this governance mechanism from the regional level, it is coming down to the national level. Thank
Excellent question. Thank you. All right. Anyone? 1, 2, 3. Yes, AIIB.
I just was struck by the presentation from Mr. Dybek on the ABAC. I think that he mentioned the first lesson he learned from the practice, the focus on projects. And that is exactly what I'm interested in. Well, we're talking about these 2 economic corridors, APAC and STKEC. I would really want to see that how, in your mind, that you would like the economic corridors to be developed with projects, because this is exactly what ADB and AIB were very much interested in. So I would very much came here. I want to hear from you that how would you think that the ADB and AIB and other MDBs in this region, ISDB as well, which we could help you to finance some of the projects in order to facilitate the development of these economic corridors. So I want you further elaborate on this. I mean, in terms of building project pipelines in the region, so that we can have some bankable projects to finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sam. Okay, so let me summarize. It's a difficult task for you, but please talk. Please share your views with us. You can reflect, of course, on the presentations. You can mention the most important parts from your prepared remarks on how these 2 economic corridors are doing. And again, be very open about that. And so to summarize what we are looking for in your responses, you can choose. You don't have to respond to all 5 questions. I counted 5 now. So 1 is the governance structure of the trilateral economic corridor, Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand economic corridor. Another question that I had, what to do with economic corridors in general, not necessarily your tools, but in general, in the areas where population is not so big, right? Is there any threshold for the population size that we think that economic corridors are optimal or not? Maybe we can actually invite Pradeep and maybe Mr. Weiss also to reflect your views, if you can, maybe after the panel. The value chains and the context, the current geopolitical perhaps context for economic corridors, challenges that you have in your work on economic corridors and how to overcome them, and projects pipeline. This is again something we in ADB, I'm sure in other multilateral development banks are thinking about how we can help countries to promote this concept and to come up with bankable projects. All right, so the floor is yours. who wants to start? And again, you don't have to answer all of them. Choose what you would like to reflect, what are you more familiar or comfortable with, and please don't be shy. So who wants to go first? Okay, yes, please, Mr. Dairbek.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pick one of them about the small population in the countries. When we mention Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, with the countries with the small volume of the economy, I think it's really important when we implement this kind of projects, especially the ABEC program, because it's not when we talked in the noon time, the economic corridor is not only about the transportation. It covers a lot of sectors. And for example, when we build when we talk about the roads, the infrastructure, the implementation of the project, it also supports the citizens, because for the small economy countries, the population is based on the small and middle enterprises. So it promotes the citizens to develop their initiatives, their ideas, and develop their businesses. For example, when we build the road between two countries, it helps to the citizens living along the road. So this is the main, I think, benefit of this project. But of course, there are a lot of other things, but what I see now, for the small countries, this part also can be the important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Derbek. Very interesting. I think what you also mentioned, it's not just about transportation. It echoes very much what Alfredo was talking about at the end of his session. It's not only about transportation. It's really about soft component. The policies extremely important, and Pradeep in the morning also stressed that point as well. So thanks for that. And I also like your focus on people, on SMEs. That's also what I truly believe in. So, Ms. Bibigul, I think you wanted to say something.
Да, я хотела ответить на вопрос, как управляются наши экономические коридоры. Именно хотела фокус сделать на коридоре Алматы-Бишкек. Как ранее Дайрбек отметил, он управляется...
Можно в микрофон, а то переводчики не слышат. Плохо слышно.
Относительно управления коридором Алматы-Бишкек хотела ваше внимание обратить, как он управляется. У нас существует межправительственный совет, в рамках которого создан подкомитет, который возглавляет вице-министры двух стран. В рамках этого подкомитета проводятся рабочие секторальные комитеты, где госорганы двух сторон обсуждают, в каких проектах мы заинтересованы, какие проекты принесут экономический эффект двум сторонам. Да, это уже система у нас налажена на государственном уровне, и я считаю, что нужно привлекать частный сектор. И мне вот до этого тема понравилась, то, что все говорят об этом, надо частный сектор привлекать, но как это сделать, пока никто не знает. Но были хорошие примеры, это было очень интересно. Ранее вот до этого же было у нас заседание, сессия. Я вот записала некоторые моменты, и я думаю, частный сектор надо привлекать, и было бы хорошо, если бы EDB организовал такой семинар с хорошими примерами, как сегодня с примерами экономических коридоров. То, что касается улучшения координации, реализации экономических коридоров, я считаю, что нужно усилить координацию на правительственном уровне, местном, и также с участием частного сектора. Но сейчас мы обсуждаем эти экономические коридоры. К сожалению, у нас регионы сами отсутствуют здесь. И я думаю, у них слабое знание, что такое экономические коридоры. Мы сами, государственные служащие, участвуем вот на этих совещаниях. И хотела бы выразить благодарность, что вы поднимаете наш потенциал, приводите такие хорошие примеры. И вот мы начинаем погружаться в это, думать об этом. Я думаю, надо чаще вот, институциональный потенциал госорганов, включая местные исполнительные органы и частный сектор привлекать. Вот это хотела сказать.
Спасибо большое, Бибигуль. Мне кажется, ваши замечания и предложения, можно сказать, по использованию, может быть, какой-то другого семинара, другой дискуссии с участием, кстати говоря, самих регионов, да, о которых мы говорим, и в которых мы бы могли обсуждать примеры участия частного сектора, потому что действительно и вы, и предыдущие спикеры тоже говорили о том, как мы можем привлечь частный сектор, как это сделать, и примеры мы сегодня слышали из Минданао, к примеру, об участии частного сектора, было бы интересно для других регионов тоже. Спасибо еще раз большое. Да, конечно.
Вот еще хотела добавить, я думаю, частный сектор как можно привлечь? Я думаю, его можно заинтересовать, как сегодня говорили, может быть, какие-то привилегии дать, какие-то льготы им, заинтересовать, что они будут иметь от этого проекта. Может, они получат какие-то знания, может, расширят свое участие в каких-то программах, может быть, у них есть свои программы, которые должны интегрироваться с нашими такими большими программами, как CAREC. Вообще, в целом, они должны интегрироваться, интегрироваться не только в национальные проекты, но и региональные. К сожалению, малый бизнес у нас тоже отсутствует. Вот при таких совещаниях, я думаю, надо привлекать побольше частный сектор, что, может быть, у них есть какое-то мнение, как они могут войти. Вот до этого был пример, что они могут давать хорошие рекомендации. Мы здесь слышим только рекомендации институтов экономических исследований, государственных служащих, но мы не слышим рекомендаций местных исполнительных органов, мы не слышим рекомендаций частного сектора, малого бизнеса. Это было бы очень полезно.
Спасибо. Thank you. I think this is good note for ADB team to start thinking maybe for the future next stages discussions to see how local governments could be participating. They should actually be part of this conference and this discussion, as well as private sector. So many thanks for that. So Mr. Ashurboy or Abdullah Madhab? Tajikistan.
Thank you. So, first of all, we must consider Central Asia as one functional zone, because while negotiation with a foreign investor, we note them that Tajikistan has 10 million population. But it does not mean that Tajikistan has more or less population than other countries. And we look, the investors should look to the Central Asia region, Central Asia market, because while producing product, goods, and service in Tajikistan, they can sell them to other Central Asia country and North and South Asia country and so on. That's why we should consider this corridor as a good chance for using all of potential of Central Asia countries, because we are maybe used only now only 10 or 15% of our potential, not only potential in trade, but by all potential in producing goods, services, and so on. And I can see Central Asia country in the future as a big exporter of goods and services. If my colleague agree with me, and for the Tajikistan, as a landlocked country, it was difficult for the first 10-15 years of independence period, because the north part and south part of Tajikistan was divided and can no any connection in winter period. And east and west part of Tajikistan also in winter period we have no connection in 6 or 7 months. But by the initiative of Tajikistan and supporting of development partner, also ADB, we can construct more than 2,400 kilometers of roads that now is used by private sector, by wide stakeholders. And we see that corridors, we see when transport corridor adjusts to economic corridor in Tajikistan. For example, it's Dushanbe Bokhtar corridor, Dushanbe Nizhny Pyanch corridor, Dushanbe Chanak is the border Uzbekistan corridor. They adjust from transport corridor to economic corridor. Now we know that CAREC corridors consist of many routes, and 3 routes, corridor 2, corridor 5, and corridor 6 leads from the territory of Tajikistan to Afghanistan. But Afghanistan, the situation in Afghanistan, it's additional burden for state budget of Tajikistan. In order to border management, to ensure border security, and also we have no any connection to transit our goods from Afghanistan to Pakistan. I mean Karachi and also Gadar seaport. So we have no now any chance to export our goods from seaports of Pakistan, and so we consider maybe corridor 5B would be improved, and Tajikistan would be participate in this corridor, strive to from Afghanistan to Pakistan. Another challenge for Tajikistan is I mentioned in today morning session, transport logistics centers. Tajikistan has a strategy to change their models from agrarian industry to industrial agrarian country. That's why we planned until 2030 to change our model, economic model, and to export not only agricultural product, also industrial product. That's why the 4th strategic goals of the Republic of Tajikistan is rapid industrialization. So now we produce more than 3 million tons of fruits and vegetables, and export only 200,000 tons of fruits and vegetables. And 73% of our fruits and vegetable export to Kazakhstan. It's a good chance for us to improving this corridor, Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand, in order to export much more agricultural products. And that's why we consider construction of transport logistics center as a priority, and for example, the south part of Tajikistan is agrarian part, but they export their foods, their agricultural products from the north part of railway of Tajikistan. The north part of railway is not only more closer to Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan. The north part of railway station has some infrastructure for loading and unloading agricultural foods, but the south part of Tajikistan has no such infrastructure. So imagine private sector, in order to export their agricultural products by cars, they make transportation all of agrarian products to north part of Tajikistan. It's more than 500 kilometers, and then they export by railway these products to other countries. If we construct transport logistical center in north and south part of Tajikistan, we would be able to export all of our potentially produced agrarian products. So that's why I mentioned in today's session the priority of construction of this. And another point, who is the stakeholder of transport? First of all, transport corridor. The stakeholder of transport corridor, not only government, not only population, it's private sector. We see that after having good collaboration and cooperation with Uzbekistan, in last 5 years, more than 200 companies opened in Tashkent Oblast by Tajik investor. So we see that this transport corridor adjusts to now economic corridor, because the private sector use this road from Khujand to Tashkent and Tashkent to Shymkent as an economic corridor. Now, that's why my colleague in today's morning session mentioned about dissemination. So we must disseminate profitable of economic corridor for private sector, for other stakeholders. And another point is using widespread using of green economy principles. So we have the cooperation framework with Kazakhstan and Russia in order to open green corridor. Green corridor is necessary for Tajikistan because fresh fruits might be transported for 7 or 6 days from Tajikistan to Kazakhstan or other countries. And that's why border procedures while exporting vegetables or fruits is a main issue for private sector. And now we coordinate this issue with Uzbekistan in order to open a green corridor in border of Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Beside green corridor, now in order to trade facility, we planned to use digital technology in border and other digital softs in order to facilitate our trade relation. So that's why we consider the economic corridor Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand as a small part of all of CAREC corridors, but it's the main part of corridors. I think for Tajikistan, in order to export their goods and to create economic corridor in Khujand region. Khujand region is industrial region, as you know, and this region has a good ability in order to export their goods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solizadeh. I think you touched upon a lot of issues. Thank you for sharing your Tajikistan experience, and you also brought up challenges dealing with Afghanistan. Indeed, Afghanistan situation also had a lot of implications for overall CAREC program in energy, in transportation, and so on. And also you mentioned the Central Asia market and economies of scale issue, branding, so agglomeration issues. So I would go even further, maybe not to think about Central Asia, but it's really CAREC region. So we view CAREC region as a potential market overall. And taking this opportunity, I also would like to mention that under CAREC, we are working on tourism, and we are branding this Visit Silk Road tourism under CAREC, and maybe even a Silk Road visa. So sort of like a Schengen visa, but CAREC visa. Also, you talked a lot about alternative transportation and transit routes. And again, we are working on that. Green economies, green corridors, digital, this is all very important. So thanks for sharing that. So let me move to Uzbekistan and to hear perspectives from Abdullah Malim on Shymkent, Khujand economic corridor, but also other issues that I mentioned earlier and questions.
Thank you, dear Ms. Laziz Sabitova, dear ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, all my colleagues fully agree with proposals and the good vision provided by ADB expert on helicopter vision on Central Asia and the new corridors, economic transport corridors. And we fully support activity of ADB for provided to us new experience from around the world, from Southeast Asia and other region, and it will be more useful and more profitable for us. Concerning a new corridor between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, I should say it's reincarnation. The former corridor we used more than 3,000 years. But today is new geopolitical and geoeconomic situation, and we will try to use this new possibilities as a driver to improve our economic capability. Да, ну, в двух словах, если сказать, вот этот коридор, госпожа Лиза Сабитович, ну, состоит примерно 297 километров между Шымкентом до Худжанта. Самый короткий маршрут. И 1 километр этой дороги сегодня дает 45 миллионов долларов ВВП. И примерно 20 миллионов долларов экспорта этих стран. Так что коридор живой, такой, имеет очень хорошую платформу. Население здесь примерно 13 миллионов. Еще что хорошо, что Казахстан для Узбекистана является 4-м партнером по внешней торговле. Вот в этом году мы, дай бог, достигнем 6 миллиардов долларов с ними. Но мы ориентируемся на 10 миллиардов. Это не предел. Возможности очень огромные. С Таджикистаном в этом году мы ожидаем примерно 600 миллионов долларов внешней торговли. И тут же поставленная задача дойти до 1 миллиарда долларов. Так что для этих целей этот коридор может играть очень хороший механизм. Я, например, скажу, что только в Ташкенте, Ташкентской области, вот в части этого коридора экономического, сегодня работает 14 тысяч предприятий легкой промышленности и 500 предприятий электронной и электротехнической промышленности. Мы заинтересованы в привлечении новых инвестиций с Казахстана. Казахстан имеет у нас банки свои, тысячи предприятий Казахстана открыл. Вот господин министр сказал, таджикские предприниматели очень активно работают в Узбекистане. Естественно, мы тоже вкладываем туда инвестиции. В Таджикистане у нас создан фонд инвестиционный для поддержки экспорта. Этот коридор может сыграть свою роль такого детерминанта для поднятия уровня развития экономики, торговли и, самое главное, снижение зависимости наших стран от внешней торговли. Я скажу, что зависимость Узбекистана от внешней торговли 2 раза больше, чем зависимость Бразилии или Соединенных Штатов Америки. Сегодня мы импортируем почти 1,5 раза больше, чем экспортируем. И наша торговля Узбекистана со странами Центральной Азии составляет менее чем 25% общего объема торговли. Чем торговать с Бразилией, Аргентиной, Чили, нам надо сосредоточиться именно в соседних регионах. Здесь, значит, закреплять свои, будем говорить, позиции. Ну и в этом году в Узбекистане в 1 класс пошли 700 тысяч учеников. То есть ежегодно у нас рождается 700 тысяч новых представителей населения. их надо трудоустроить. В этой связи создание новых рабочих мест вдоль этого коридора, создание новых агломераций, поддержка урбанизации, освобождение нашей экономики от тяжелого ярма сельского хозяйства тоже имеет очень большое значение. Именно этот коридор должен стать таким-то локомотивом, вытягивающим, освобождающим нас от тяжелой сельскохозяйственной работы и перехода к производству товаров с высокой добавленной стоимостью. Я бы сказал, высокотехнологичной продукции. В этом году объем экспорта высокотехнологичной продукции, в общем объеме экспорта Узбекистана составит примерно 10%. Но это очень мало. Мы начинали с 2-3%. А в Сингапуре это составляет 56%. Значит, в развитых странах около 38-40%. Поэтому вот экономический коридор как бы должен работать флагманом и в плане достижения этих целей. Это, конечно, нелегко. С одной стороны, легко. Правительство поддерживает, общество поддерживает. Почему нелегко? Потому что мы должны отформатировать эффективный механизм привлечения иностранных инвестиций, высоких технологий, лучших специалистов. Вот именно в этот коридор. И тогда малый и средний бизнес будет сориентирован на этот коридор. И мы воспользуемся, значит, вин-вин. То есть выигрывает и правительство, выигрывает и население, выигрывает и предприниматели. В этой связи, почему еще сложно? Потому что мы должны с Казахстаном и Таджикистаном должны гармонизировать наши стандарты, сертификаты, разрешительные процедуры, визовые процедуры, перевозки грузов, хранения и так далее и тому подобное. Все это требует времени. Я надеюсь на большую помощь Азиатского банка развития в решении этих проблем. Спасибо.
Thank you. Спасибо большое, Абдуллам Алим. Thank you very much. And I think you really touched upon opportunities that ECD can bring to Uzbekistan, but again, thinking broader to Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and overall CAREC. I would only make one remark that you talked about the dependency of Uzbekistan on external trade. Actually, this can be a good thing, and I would not frame it as either or domestic sources of growth or external sources of growth. Any trade is good, but this is a global debate. Just either yesterday or today, the Director General of WTO, Ms. Ngozi, I don't know if you had a chance to see her remarks, her speech at, I think, at G20, and it was pretty remarkable. And she just really lashed out on Western countries for nationalism, protectionism, and so on. So I think within CAREC, we are really working towards trade facilitation. But you mentioned a very good thing, and also I think Mr. Solejada also mentioned that integration within CAREC is so weak. It's the weakest integrated region among all three sub-regional programs. And we're also within ADB are looking into this. What are the reasons? Why is that? We have talent, we have governments that want, but somehow the regional integration is not really happening. So we do hope with ABEC, with Chimkent-Tashkent-Khujan Economic Corridor, we will be promoting this regional integration. Also, you mentioned diversification. I think it's a very good point, a link between ECD, value chains, economic diversification, very strong link, and also challenges. So I know we are running out of time. There's so much to discuss, but I really would like to hear Christian, Shinlan, and Toya before we wrap up. But I do hope we answer questions that the audience asked. So if you can, in your remarks, maybe reflect on governance structure of the trilateral corridor, and also some maybe thinking about regional pipeline of projects as well. So Christian, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone.
Let me share a story about the Almaty Bishkek.
Christian, I think the translators cannot hear you very well. Can you talk louder?
Can you hear me better?
Yes, now better, yeah.
Thanks. Let me share a story on the Almaty Bishkek economic corridor. In the very beginning of the corridor, we started to focus a lot on the conceptual framework, maybe for around 2 to 3 years between 2014 and 2016. And that was very helpful to actually get the governance structure in place and have the two governments set up the Almaty Bishkek subcommittee. That is a regular meeting of the vice ministers and deputy ministers of economy. And they report then to the Intergovernmental Council, which is the meeting of the prime ministers of both countries that meet at least once a year in recent times. So from this structure, we actually had a good starting point to leave a little bit aside the conceptual framework and start to look at regional projects. And so we try to identify with the government, with colleagues, which projects could be the most relevant for the ABEC implementation. But we also saw that these regional projects are mostly very complex. They're very difficult to implement, but they also on the upside yield wider economic benefits because they not only benefit one country, but two countries. So our approach in ABEC was to make it as easy as possible for the project teams and for the government to work on these projects. So we had like a very strong team, or we have a very strong team on the ground that has a very wide network. So we basically became like a platform for ideas. So if anyone had an idea, we immediately could figure out if it's a worthwhile project to pursue. And we also had funds to support this idea. So we engaged in like producing master plans. For example, we have the tourism master plan for the Almaty and Bishkek and Issyk regions. We engaged in pre-feasibility studies to develop these ideas. For example, for health laboratories in the region. We also did market studies, for example, for the direct bus connection between Almaty and Bishkek. We launched a study, what are the regulatory requirements, which private sector operators are in place, what are the hurdles. We found that the government is saying, okay, why is not anyone coming to us to ask for a license? And the private sector is saying, okay, the government is not really providing doesn't make it easy for us to operate there because the border crossing point is very cumbersome or it's very difficult to get a license. There are different regulations in different countries. For example, the Kazakh require that it's a joint venture between the Kyrgyz and Kazakh companies, so that made it more difficult. But eventually, with this support, we solved some of these chicken and egg problems. And we now have the master plan for tourism is approved by both governments. We have bus services running between Almaty and Bishkek on a regular basis. And we also saw that having a discussion around investment projects really helped for a more substantive discussion, because just a conceptual discussion, what you want to do is not as engaging and not as involving as a discussion on where to invest a couple of $1 million. So that really helped. For example, in the very first project on the Almaty-Bishkek corridor was on wholesale markets in Bishkek and Almaty, agricultural wholesale markets. And even though the project is not yet approved, it actually transformed into a project supporting regional value chains and on-farm productivity in Kyrgyz Republic, and basically providing the ground for later support on wholesale markets. So even though it was the project wasn't approved as initially planned, it really helped to discuss these things between the two governments and also, of course, between the governments and ADB. I think as a next phase, we certainly try
to engage more the private sector. We already have that as part of the bus connections. We had a lot of engagement with the private sector, also on the wholesale market side, because this is a private dominated area. So there are some touch points, but generally, of course, the private sector is risk averse and has a lot of expectations on laying the groundwork, preparing everything, doing feasibility studies. But in some instances, we were able to go along with the private sector and were successful there. So as a next phase for Almaty Bishkek, we try to have, of course, more projects. We also go and we try to venture into a new area of development, which is disaster risk management, because we actually see that between Almaty and Bishkek, there's a huge mountain range with a lot of glaciers that are reducing and melting with climate change. So there will be different rain patterns, there will be more flooding and so on that we want to adapt to and mitigate these issues. So this is another part, but on the institutional side, we also start thinking about a regional development fund that is basically establishing the economic corridor further and seeing if it's possible to have more implementation from the countries and less involvement of the Asian Development Bank, so that there's a mechanism to fund relevant projects basically by itself. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Christian. Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned, I think, the importance of pre-feasibility studies, feasibility studies. Of course, we are providing grants for that. And I also share with our participants from governments that it's getting more and more difficult within ADB to mobilize grant funds for regional activities. So in fact, I know World Bank, also ADB is contemplating to moving towards what we call reimbursable technical assistance. So very difficult. So governments have to really help us to prepare good quality, ready projects for feasibility and pre-feasibilities. Also, chicken and egg, I really like, I think you summarize it very well, the relationships between private sector, government side, and so on, and DRM, of course, disaster risk management, so important. So let me move quickly to last, certainly not the least, participant of this panel, Ms. Teya Lazaro from Manila. So Teya, the floor is yours to reflect on PRC and Mongolia in a short way. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not so sure. Okay. I'm hearing myself. Sorry about this. Probably. Okay. So just answer the question quickly in terms of the cross-border economic cooperation zone between Mongolia and the PRC. And these are located at the borders, at the busiest between Mongolia and PRC, along CAREC Corridor 4B. So this project, there was a question on what type of projects we can do. And from the ADB experience, we have two ongoing parallel investments. And this will promote a regional cooperation and integration along this corridor as an example. So first, for this, for both Mongolia and the PRC side, we have hard and physical infrastructure investments and facilities that we are supporting. And particularly on the soft component, which is the ICT, we're helping develop integrated border management systems, one-stop shops, as well as smart borders. The other type of investments or support that ADB is providing in this cross-border economic zone development is to support a more sustainable operation and maintenance of the facilities, and particularly through potential PPP or public-private partnership arrangements. So these, because we believe that zone operations, even after ADB investments, will be important to be sustainable and self-generating in terms of supporting income generations by the government. So these are the things that we are looking for. The other type of investments that are embedded in the design of parallel investments for both Mongolia and the PRC is support for SME financing. And we are also introducing, in addition, introduction of climate resilient infrastructure, such as water saving technologies. So these are just an example of the broader holistic investment program that ADB incorporated in our projects for developing the cross-border economic zone. So the bottom line from our end is to reiterate what has already been mentioned, to make sure that we conduct proper due diligence in all these projects for both effective design and sustainability. The second one, which is actually what we are doing in this cross-border economic zone, is the phased implementation approach. Meaning to say, between the two zones of Mongolia and PRC in the border of Samiud and Eren Hot, we have identified 900 hectares for each of the zone, but ADB investment for now is only supporting a third of the investment. So we need to make sure that the operations within the zone are viable and operational, and then we can expand. And the third, probably a takeaway from this ongoing project of ADB is the coordinated planning. There's a lot of discussions on master plan development, and this is what is being done in both Mongolia and PRC. We have joint coordinating council and expert working group to actually look at the policies, look at the strategy for the development of the cross-border economic zone, and the privileges or the benefits to ensure complementarity rather than competition between the zones of Mongolia and PRC. I'll stop here, Laisisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thea. Thanks for this quick overview of this very, very important economic corridor between Mongolia and China. So I think we need to wrap up this session and really to thank all the panelists. I think if there is a red thread through this whole discussion, including the previous one, I would say it's really the private sector involvement in ECDs and the relationship again between what governments should do, what's the role of private sector, how to attract them, how to make the ECD area more attractive to foreign investors. Economies of scale, again, the classical consideration when we talk about ECDs, the link between ECDs, value chains, and diversification. And of course, for our region, diversification of the economy is so important. It's such a long-standing problem. All countries are working. I mean, there are thousands of strategies, plans, actions plan, programs to promote that. Yet in many, many countries, the progress is not yet there. So the question is really why. Governance structure, very important, of course, but also new areas. I really like what Christian mentioned, the disaster risk management. And of course, we all understand how important this is in this era of climate change with, our region, devastating floods in Pakistan last year, devastating fires in Kazakhstan this year that cost lives and of course infrastructure and so on. So very important area. We are branding into that. We started to think about issuing a CAREC disaster risk bond and disaster risk transfer facility. Very complex area. We are at the very, very early stages of that. But also I'd like to say that there is a link between these discussions. Tomorrow we are really looking forward to hear experience from SASEC, from South Asia, and also to development partners' view on all the issues mentioned upon in this session today. I also wanted to mention that all the presentations that our people prepared and our panelists prepared, including from morning sessions, I think will be available to all of you. We will share with you definitely. And again, this is a challenge to cramp a lot of materials, a lot of discussions into 2 days of workshop, including, the 3 sub-regional projects. So it's a huge task. So thank you for your patience. And again, I really hope that you can continue these discussions during the coffee breaks and dinners and lunches. So thanks again. Many thanks to the panelists. Thank you for sharing your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesisa. Before we end the day, can I request Mr. Chris McCormack for a brief wrap-up of day one? Chris, are you there?
Yeah, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, conference participants, and thank you for this opportunity. Today's deliberations have been informative, illuminating, and productive. The Deputy Minister Gunsatz emphasized the importance of ECD for achieving diversification of the economy, higher value cross-border flows of goods and services, more productive employment opportunities, and wider distribution of socio-economic benefits of public and private investment. The Deputy Minister also stressed that progressive ECD is dependent on substantial investments in higher quality infrastructure and other complementary investment, for example, logistics and trade facilitation. ECD represents a continuing commitment by government in partnership with the private sector. And ECD is a strategic approach to a country's development. Yet it is an approach that is conducted in close and sustained cooperation and coordination with neighboring countries. The opening remarks provided by Director Sabirova, Development Bank, asserted the strategic importance of ECD in ADB's development programs, and she affirmed ADB's longstanding and continuing commitment and support for ECD. The director encouraged participants to use this conference as a valuable opportunity to share their collective knowledge, experience, and lessons learned on ECD, so that all of you, as peers, collaborating closely, learn from and support each other. Session 1 began with a presentation by ADB on a refined framework and guidelines for economic corridor development. Underpinned by decades of real-world experience and evidence, and recognizing evolving demands and expectations of developing countries for more advanced ways to develop their economy, the refined framework offers a new approach to ECD, one that moves beyond the conventional transport trade-centric approach towards a more spatially based or regional development conception. There is no single model of an economic corridor, but broadly there are 4 categories, and even these can be combined depending on countries' needs and development contexts. Under the new framework, ECD is not a single project, but a more complex approach that links diverse physical and non-physical infrastructure, is multi-sector, multi-industry, offers rational economic incentives to attract private firms and investment, and to spur the development of new markets, and promotes strengthening institutions and the application of productive regulation. The framework has been formulated to help countries decide what type of ECD is relevant for them, what their starting point should be, and in which direction they should move over time, and how to operationalize the ECD program. The framework provides a meaningful and usable classification and operational structure to support the best design and best choice of an ECD project, given national and cross-border development contexts and evolving trends. The guidelines define stages of ECD development, highlight cross-cutting issues, for example, quality of public sector capacities, environmental impacts, and sorry, I lost my screen for a second. Environmental impacts, and points to the potential pitfalls such as poor interagency or interstakeholder coordination. ADB and other development partners have various institutional strengths that it can bring to bear to assist countries with planning, financing, and implementing the new ECD framework. At the same time, ADB and other partners will continue to learn from their own experience with the new guidelines and framework, and make necessary adjustments to its own operational and administrative practices. Broadly, participants welcome the refined ECD framework and operational guidelines, considering them a valuable and timely approach for planning more modern and more beneficial ECD. It was noted that many countries already have in place ECD or ECD-type programs and projects. Countries view ECD as a holistic approach for the following reasons: to develop and integrate sectors, even subsectors, at the national level with a view to integrating them more widely across borders, to widen and deepen dialogue and economic cooperation and integration among countries, and thereby improve implementation of existing trade arrangements in which countries participate, to further develop industrial clusters and value chains, and open more opportunities for landlocked countries to become land-linked countries through participation in near and long-distance trade and development. Participants acknowledge the operational challenges of designing and executing spatial-based public-private sector-based and multi-sector ECD operations. In that regard, greater and more systematic knowledge and experience sharing among all RCI stakeholders will be critical, such as this conference. Country participants expressed a desire for stronger cooperation and technical assistance and advice and other knowledge resources from ADB and other development partners on how to adapt and implement successfully the framework and guidelines in specific country and sub-regional contexts. In session 2, we explored the rich experiences of the Greater Mekong sub-region and the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation with designing and implementing ECD initiatives. The various presentations and discussions highlighted the diversity of ECD programs and projects in terms of multiple sectors and themes and the many objectives and intended beneficiaries they serve. Therefore, it is important that the implementation of ECD maintains local flexibility and adaptiveness in operationalizing ECD programs. That's important. But at the same time, also aiming for cross-border coordination and complementarity and even interdependent linkages and outcomes. Experience shows that effective ECD has been demand and stakeholder driven, has been planned very strategically, involving frequent and inclusive consultations among government, development partners, the private sector and civil society, and at various levels. And this will be even more important as stakeholders adopt a modern spatial approach to ECD. Similarly, the session stressed that involvement of the public sector and development finance institutions is critical during the early stages of ECD, to crowd in private capital and entrepreneurship, to develop diverse and complementary markets, and to raise the productivity of public sector investments and policy reforms. It was pointed out that some types of infrastructure, such as information and communications technology or large-scale urban infrastructure, could be better planned and operated through well-designed public-private partnerships. Countries have and continue to make deliberate, concerted efforts to assess their ECD-type operations. Some key lessons have been learned, which include, among others, spatial-based ECD can be both land-based and archipelago-based, having both common and unique features among them. Develop good plans, develop them inclusively. Open trade and investment policies are supportive of ECD. Individual countries can participate in more than one ECD, which can add synergies, but also increase the complexity of policy formulation and public investment. Balance hard and soft structure investment. Create wider network effects across various corridors, as this leads to greater impacts. Align ECDs with the development of value chains. Include cross-border national and various subnational perspectives when planning, designing, financing, and assessing ECDs. And ensure that the ECD monitoring and assessment protocols and coordination governance mechanisms reflect these different levels. Exploit the opportunity presented by ECDs to integrate any individual economy with other economies that are at the same level of development or much more developed and even less developed for sound economic reasons, and mobilize financial and technical support from a wide set of national and external partners. There are also challenges, of course. For example, how relevant is ECD for the development of small population regions? Can they develop ECD at scale? One response has been, go beyond the transport considerations, look at small and medium scale enterprise development, and look at a sub-region as a single market, not simply as a set of small adjoining markets. How does regional ECD governance impact national level governance? Consider establishing inter-country committees and other mechanisms at different levels of government, and invite and incentivize the private sector from all participating countries into that dialogue. How do we what can be done to develop new pipelines of ECD projects? Prepare a package of diversified project investments. Make each item in a package complementary and employ various modalities of financing. There were a couple of other questions that were raised, which there was unfortunately not too much time to address, but they could be considered perhaps tomorrow. How can we improve links between ECDs and value chains? And how do we strengthen intra-sub-regional economic integration? Taken together, these outcomes demonstrate again how important and valuable continued sustained knowledge sharing, dialogue, and cross-learning among countries is to help advance ECD and RCI more broadly. Dear participants, tomorrow we will begin by conducting session 2 with an examination of the experiences and lessons identified from extensive ECD operations under South Asia sub-regional economic cooperation. After which, session 3, followed by session 4, will explore the experiences of major multilateral development finance partners supporting ECD and how we can make effective use of economic analysis to take investment decisions on ECD. But that is for tomorrow. Until then, please enjoy your dinner this evening and enjoy each other's company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Some few reminders before we finally end day one. Everybody's invited to the dinner, same place where we had lunch. Tomorrow's session will start at 9 a.m. And for the speakers, all the presentations will be uploaded in the ADB site. So for the presenters and the speakers, we've left a consent form on your table. Kindly sign it so that we can openly share the presentations and the recording of the sessions. Lastly, for those with written remarks, if you could just give it to the secretariat to make it easy for us to prepare the proceedings. Again, thank you everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.